Hello, welcome to No Man Running. When I started getting to run more regularly back in 2021 and I realised it was something I was going to keep up, I decided to treat myself to a few pairs of running shoes, and being the kind of obsessive personality that I am, I did a ton of research online on all the different types of shoes. So I bought a bunch of shoes online, got some great deals, or so I thought. But of like the 5 pairs I bought, maybe 2 of them ended up actually suiting me, and it was only when I got to go to my local running store and get properly fitted for a pair of shoes that I kind of realised what actually did suit me. So I'm lucky to be joined today by Sadie Saxton. She worked in a running store for many years, and she was able to articulate very clearly all of the good reasons for going to a local running store and all of the good things that they can do to make sure that you've got the right pair of shoes. So if you're just starting out or you're thinking you need to change your type of shoe, then give Sadie a listen, and I think you'll get a lot of good information for getting out and getting the kind of running shoe that suits you. So I'm with Sadie Saxton today, who totally crushed her first marathon here at Grandma's Marathon. You did it in what today?
3 hours and 19 minutes.
Wow, that's amazing.
I started working at Fleet Feet at their Pittsburgh branch when I was 16 and worked there through graduation. Then started working also at a Fleet Feet, but up in Brunswick, Maine, while I was in college for the next 4 years.
What do you do when someone comes into the store that's maybe a newer runner?
First of all, you take off your shoes and your socks so that we can see kind of everything going on, and roll up any pants because you want to be able to look at ankles as well as just feet. Mm-hmm. And then watch someone walk away from you and back, and just watch kind of how their ankles move, how their feet move, if their arch collapses a ton, if it stays up. At a lot of running stores, but they can do a 3D scan of your foot.
Right.
And so then you can look at the exact shape of your foot, and it will help you see kind of if the instep is high, if their arch is high, and then that can clue you into kind of different brands or different shoes that might work well for that person. So you kind of decide immediately after watching them walk. It's pretty easy to decide whether they need a stability shoe or a neutral shoe. So a lot of people, either a totally neutral gait would just be somebody who walks and goes without any movement of their ankle from back to front. Mm-hmm. But somebody who overpronates, their ankle is going to roll in as they walk, and somebody who supinates, their ankle is going to go out as they walk. And so the 2 categories of shoes, stability shoes, are for people who overpronate. So they put a thicker foam on the inside of the shoe so that when you're running or walking and you're doing that rolling, then the thicker foam here doesn't wear down as easily. So it doesn't actually change anything about the way that you walk, which I think is kind of a misconception about them, that they give more support or they help change that overpronation, but they'll help the shoe wear more evenly, which is helpful because if you already overpronate and then your shoe wears out a ton on that inside, then it will just make it more pronounced. Yeah. And a neutral shoe kind of works for people who aren't perfectly neutral and also people who supinate. So if you're going to the outside, you would also wear a neutral shoe. And the biggest thing is that if you roll out and supinate, you would not want to wear a stability shoe because that would push you way more to the outside.
Right. And you'd have that whole wear thing going on.
Exactly, yeah.
Got it. How do you narrow it down further?
I always like to ask what they've been running in previously, because sometimes you don't want to make too big of a jump if they've been running in something really, really minimal, and then you put them in this kind of clunky, huge shoe. That's going to feel really weird. I guess I go more off of that than brand, of saying, like, what feelings do you like in the shoe? Do you like a really cushioned shoe, lightweight shoe? Do you like to have a lot of space in the toe box? But also, a lot of the time we'll go off of kind of that shape from the 3D scan. So you can kind of tell, like, what different brands are known for fitting slightly differently. So if you know somebody has kind of a wider foot or a more narrow foot, you can be led towards different brands.
Do all shoes from the different manufacturers, are they all true to size?
In theory, they're all true to size. I think there are some where you can kind of play around a little half size or not half size. I found more so than with length that sometimes the width of a shoe will make me play around with size a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I ran in Nikes for my whole high school and college life, and I always wore an 8.5. And then I've switched to Hoka's kind of since graduating, and I always wear an 8 in Hoka. So I think they're a little bit wider, and I don't like to feel like I'm slipping all around. So I think that just that change has, and they don't feel too short. So I guess maybe they run a little bit long, but I also think a lot of people end up going up a half size in a running shoe compared to all of their kind of everyday shoes. So a lot of people would come in, especially people buying their first fitted pair of running shoes, and say, I'm a 7.5, and we would always want to measure their foot anyway.
Right.
We'd say like, well, do you mind if we just measure to make sure? And we would almost always want to go up either a half size or a whole size, just because nobody wants to be wearing a shoe that's really tight and then your toes are getting all messed up. I think it never hurts to try different shoes. So sometimes I think even if someone says like, I run however many miles a week, I've been doing it forever, and this is the shoe that I love, I think it's useful to kind of compare that to similar shoes, which is what someone can help you with in the running store. You can say, I'm in this shoe, and they can pull 2 other ones that are kind of in the same category, just to make sure that there's not some new technology in another brand that also fits really well and feels good.
And tell me about insole. Is it a benefit of taking the one from the manufacturer out and putting another one in? Or?
Definitely not going to hurt you, and it is probably going to help you. The thought process is if you take out the insole in each shoe, it's super bendy, like it's not offering you any support. It might look like it goes up in the arch, but it's just pure foam. Like you're going to collapse that the minute your foot touches it. And then the bottom of every shoe, regardless of brand, regardless of type of shoe, is just completely flat. And so with every step that you take, your foot has to completely collapse and then reflex. And so what an insole does is just puts a more natural bed for your foot in the shoe. And that bed is making your foot work a little bit less hard with every step. And so once I kind of heard that and understood that, you kind of think to yourself, like, your feet are the key piece in running. It seems like if they're doing well, the rest of your body has a better shot of doing well. So if there's a way to make them work less hard with every step, why not? So I've bought in, and I wear them in all my running shoes, and then when I'm done with them in a running shoe, I put them in like a walking shoe.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. And I assume you have to buy a specific insole for, like, if you get 3 pairs of running shoes, your three different insoles. Right?
That's what I do. You can switch it around. An insole generally will outlast a running shoe, so they don't wear down quite as quickly.
Right.
But if you're doing multiple shoes, then it probably will wear down as quickly. I think it just depends your tolerance for switching the insole all around.
You're talking about the life of running shoes. What's your advice?
I've heard kind of anywhere from 300 to 400 miles you should be replacing them. I don't tend to keep track of my total mileage, and mostly I think you can feel it when you need to get a new pair of running shoes. Like for me, it'll be weird. I'll have kind of weird aches and pains, like my knees will be hurting, or I won't feel like I'm recovering quite as quickly.
Yeah.
And when I feel like that, then I kind of think about, well, when did I get these running shoes? And I think normally when you have to kind of rack your brain and think really hard about when did I get these running shoes, it's probably time.
Yeah, true. Well, and lastly, on the shoe front, then, what do you think about shoe rotations?
I think there's definitely benefits to shoe rotations. What it does is just in every shoe, it will slightly change your stride and slightly change kind of what exact muscles are working and how you're working them. So it can help reduce like overuse injuries just because your stride's changing ever so slightly. And especially if you're running on the roads in the same pair of shoes, it's a lot of repetition of the same muscles. The how you do it changes a lot depending on what you want out of it. If you want to have like a speed shoe or just 2 different pairs of shoes that are kind of interchangeable and you don't specialize them. So there's a lot of variation within that, but I do think it's good to rotate.
Yeah. I've got 15. Do you think that's enough?
That's perfect.
I thought that was about the right number. Here's my last question, is back round to the marathon front. You ran your first marathon today. Do you have like one key takeaway or a couple of key takeaways for someone running the first marathon?
Well, I think savor the fun parts, because there are a lot of fun parts. And it's nice to think about those when you're hitting maybe some not so fun parts, to remember that for however many hours before you were really having a wonderful time. And then in a much more just surface level response, I pinned my name to the top of my shirt, which that was awesome because people would cheer for you by name.
That's a really cool idea.
And it's a huge boost of adrenaline every time somebody says, "Go Sadie." I was feeling really good about that.
One last thing about local running stores especially is that they tend to, like the one in my neighbourhood, play a huge role in the community. They sponsor local races, put out water and Gatorade on our Sunday run, and they just generally play a big role in the community as well as helping you find the right shoes. And so it's worth it for me, an extra 10 or 15 bucks that I might be paying for a pair of running shoes versus online, because it really helps support the local running community. So give some thought to supporting your local running store.